This is Mary Kay DeCourcy, Chair of the Auburn Public Library Board of Trustees, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 5:59 p.m. on Wednesday, July 10th, 2024. This is an open meeting of the Auburn Public Library Board of Trustees. It's being recorded by the Auburn Public Library in the Public Library Merriam Room, Please note that this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cablevision. Is anyone else in the room recording this meeting? Very good. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the Auburn Town website on Friday, July 5th, 2024. Permit me to confirm that members of this body and persons anticipated on the agenda are present. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Matt Toth.
Present.
Eric Riesacker.
Present.
Vera Crane.
Present.
Lindsay Baker.
Present.
And I too am present. Thank you, everyone. Town employees participating, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jean Collins, Library Director.
Present.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to begin the meeting. The first item on the agenda is to review and vote on approved minutes. I believe Eric and I talked earlier in the day because the meeting wasn't posted. There's sort of a lag on the meeting minutes. So can we expect those in September when we reconvene? So we will not have meeting minutes at this time. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Does anyone have public comment? Please, Todd Crane, come right up. Where would you like to?
I can be here.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, can you?
I'm sorry, Chris.
Yeah,
I know better. I'm sorry.
Camera's right there.
I'm sorry, Chris. I should know better.
Can you walk with the mic?
No, that's good. That's good. Okay, thank you. Todd Crane, I'm a member of the select board, but I'm not speaking on behalf of that board, full disclosure. I just wanted to, I've not seen it on your agenda, so I did want to bring to the attention of the bot, certainly not for discussion tonight, because it wasn't noticed, but I just wanted to let you know that at the May 13th meeting of the select board did accept the recommendation of the naming committee to name the sunroom after the trustees. So
Awesome.
The select board voted to name the trustees room. At that same meeting, we voted to name the bridge that will be also part of that expansion after the Pappases. And there was a discussion about the children's room, which is currently unnamed. And what we voted on that was certainly there's no need to name it, or we're not sure if there's a desire to name it. But if and when there's a desire, the board is deferring that to the library board of trustees. So we would look for you to have a public process to determine a name and then come to the select board. There was supposed to be a letter sent to you, sent to the board on behalf of the select board. So if there hasn't been, you might want to check in with the town manager's office just to make sure about that. The only other comment that I would have is that I had signed up for the Auburn Public Library listserv email that goes out letting you know when events are happening. And I did that because I missed an event that was interesting to me last December. And what I noticed is in every email, I get them 1 to 2 times a week, is that all of the programming that's highlighted is children's programming, which is great. I'm glad we're doing this programming, but none of the adult programs are actually featured in there. So it's always here is the brochure and the flyer, sign up for these events, but it's always the kids' events. So going forward, since there are people like me who are interested in the adult programming, but we're missing them, if you guys can, including in those emails, include and promote the adult programming as well with the flyers so that we're made aware about it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Could
you.
I take a minute to comment?
Please do.
So typically in the summer, we really emphasize children's programs, and then in the fall, there's a lot more. I did an analysis of all of our adult programs, which I'll talk about tonight as well. So typically in the summer and leading up to the summer, it's very heavy emphasis on the children's programs.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. This actually goes back to January is when I first signed up. So every email since then has not had those.
Anybody else have any comment? Thank you, Mr. Corain. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move to the next agenda item, which we're all excited to hear on number 4, the subcommittee report and recommendations for beautification of the Auburn Public Library. I just want to take a moment as the chair, just a note from the chair for the purpose of the minutes. As chair, I reserve the role of setting a tone, moving the meeting along, and stopping the discussion if the tone of the meeting does not present as safe and supportive to every participant in this meeting. So we are a democratic body, and we have a challenge. We can challenge one another, our thinking, without creating a sense of competition. I say this because we have had a very close partnership with the town manager and the assistant town manager, and lots of discussion. Vera's been kind enough to give a lot of time with me to meet with them to ensure moving forward. We unfortunately had gone through 7 board members that stepped down because they felt that it was too tense in the meeting. So I just want to be very, very clear. As a public school educator, I'm all about what is safe and supportive. Everyone needs to have a voice. This is a Democratic party. I do want there to be tension, but I want it to feel very, very respectful. So I just want to state that. Does anybody have any comments for me? No. Excellent. Then we will move on. I'm excited to hear from Lindsay Baker about her subcommittee report on the recommendations for the beautification of the Auburn Public Library, and to follow with discussion.
Great. So I have shared with the members of the Board of Trustees, and I think, just read through this for the public. So on Saturday, July 29th, a subcommittee of the Library Board of Trustees convened in the history room here at the Auburn Public Library, joined by a couple members of the community. We reviewed historical art and artifacts already in the library's possession, and we now are presenting a proposal for the full Board of Trustees consideration. This report is organized by room, where we envision or hope that the respective art and artifacts will be displayed. So starting in the history room, we are proposing that we hang 3 framed black and white documents that are pictured in picture 1. I'm not sure how to show these to camera, but that we'll make sure that they're posted with the minutes. That actually establish the change in our town's name from Board to Auburn. We feel these are appropriate for the history room, will look particularly good hanging on the white walls in there. The frames are in suitable condition, other than requiring maybe a little dusting, and we believe could be hung without additional cost. We'd also recommend that we hang a plaque explaining the context for why the town name was changed, as that's information that we think is unique and charming for the history room. I will leave the excerpt out, but I had proposed some language that can be refined once we agree on a way forward about the history of the town name change. Also in the history room, we would propose hanging a portrait of Joseph Stone Esquire. He is a black and white framing and portrait that we think coordinate well with the black and white documents and fit the theme of the history room. The frame and portrait are in very good condition and should be able to be hung without additional cost or effort. Likewise, we would propose compiling a brief biography of him. He played a key role in, we think, naming the town for some historical documents that I found. So I thought that would be interesting to add for context. And then lastly, in the history room, the subcommittee recommends replacing the metal cabinet in the corner of the room. We have a picture of that as well. We ideally would replace with a more stylistically appropriate cabinet, something like a barrister's cabinet for storing the historical books and other artifacts in the library's collection, which ideally we'd get reviewed by a professional archivist and more appropriately preserve those artifacts. This effort, of course, would need to be well coordinated with our library director to ensure appropriate dimensions and functional features are met. Does it need to be on casters as the current one is? What type of folders or storage might the library need to procure to more effectively preserve documents in the collection? Funds would be needed to purchase and potentially retrofit a given piece of furniture if we agree and choose and represent that we'd like to move forward with that. It may be needed to replace the Ziploc style bags currently holding some of the documents. The subcommittee would like to recommend that the Board of Trustees consider either or both as a possible future opportunity to contribute funds and trust under the Board of Trustees management. The second room that we focus on and would like to see spruced up is the one we're currently in, which is the Merriam room. The collection in the library's possession includes 4 portraits of members of the Merriam family. Leander, who built the first town library, Ebenezer, his father, Clarissa, his mother, and another woman whose frame and name placard are missing. The Board of Trustees committee proposes hanging the 4 portraits in their namesake Merriam room in the library, along with brief bios about the family and their contributions to the Auburn library system. The frames for the men's portraits are in very good condition. Portraits themselves were clearly reprinted and reframed. We saw older versions that had significant damage were also in the collection of artifacts laid out for us in the history room that morning. These we feel could be hung without additional cost or effort. The subcommittee also proposes that the same restoration treatment be afforded to the 2 women's portraits, both of which have significant sun bleaching and require new frames, which you can see in the photographs. There's a crack in the glass, and one of them is just completely unframed and has some small holes in it. The subcommittee will conduct outreach to the Auburn Historical Society in addition to conducting online research to determine the identity of the second woman. Once again, her name placard is missing. We couldn't figure out who she was. And the subcommittee would like to recommend that this also be considered as a possible future opportunity to apply funds and trust to support the beautification of the library. And then lastly, for the Merriam room, I learned some history while we were gathered that we would propose that the library ascertain a framed photograph of the Merriam Library Building, which is located at 102 Central Street in Auburn and currently serves as an office building for town staff. The subcommittee feels it's important to draw a connection between the current library and the original town library, as well as, of course, Leander Merriam, to highlight the interesting story. The effort should include reaching out to the Auburn Historical Society, as well as to the town manager and his team to identify any existing available artifacts and to be determined whether this would require funds to execute. Next is a couple of items that we felt would be appropriate for the children's room. Among the artifacts that was in the collection is a charming quilt pictured in picture 4 of the report. And this included fabric blocks of the Space Shuttle Discovery, hand-drawn by young town residents. We felt the quilt would benefit from a careful spot cleaning in some areas, but is generally in good condition and was made to be hung on a curtain rod. The subcommittee recommends that this could be displayed in the children's room to tie into the rocket theme throughout the main library building, which we'll discuss in a minute. And additionally, the library possesses a poster signed by Dan Barry, who was a member of the crews of the Endeavour and 2 Discovery space flights, one of which is believed to be commemorated by the quilt. The poster requires a new frame, but would nicely accompany the quilt along with a bio of Mr. Barry and his accomplishments. The subcommittee discussed and would like to consider with the full Board of Trustees ideas for how to update such a display in the children's room, with ideas brainstormed during the Saturday meeting, including conducting outreach to Mr. Barry, who currently runs an AI and robotics firm. Perhaps he'd be willing to come and give a talk that would interest adults and children, and B, planning a children's activity to create a piece of art that could be hung commemorating more recent space travel. Lastly, we will talk about the items that we felt would be wonderful to display throughout the main library building. The most impressive collection of framed historical art is the group of 10 items pertaining to the Goddard Rocket, pictured in number 5 in the report for those following along. The framed pieces are in very good shape, only appearing to require a bit of dusting and cleaning. The newspaper article seen on the floor, it's hard to see, but there is one there, is laminated, but just requires a frame. The subcommittee recommends that this collection be hung throughout the main library, along with brief descriptions of each image if possible, or a summary of Goddard's contributions to space exploration and his connection to Auburn, to create a museum-style display for patrons to take in. With recognition that open wall space is limited due to the design of the library building, this effort will need to be done in close collaboration with the library director to ensure the frames are best positioned for visibility while protecting and preserving the pieces. Other than purchase of one frame, it does not seem that additional funds should be needed for this effort. Also discovered in the collection is a plaque, picture 6, acknowledging individuals that have made meaningful contributions to the library. The Board of Trustees subcommittee recommends adding names to the list, including Dr. Pappas, and then mounting the plaque in a prominent location in the library. A small amount of funds will likely be needed to send out the little metal tags for engraving, and the subcommittee recommends this effort for the full Board of Trustees consideration, both to identify additional names and future contribution of funds. And then lastly, the collection included a poorly framed but well-preserved calendar commemorating the Revolutionary War as seen in picture 7. The subcommittee proposes that at minimum this be reframed. There was also a bag of documents, articles, and things pertaining to one of the world wars. The subcommittee does not have a formal recommendation for these artifacts, but see potential for a future display, and at minimum would like to see these stored more appropriately. And so concludes the report.
A plus on that one.
Thank you.
Excellent. Before anybody comments, I just want to say that we will submit those pictures.
Yes.
I know if, John, I'm just going to reach out to you. Is there any way that we can focus on those pictures, or should I just include them with the minutes?
We saw the windshield.
You could see them?
Could see them.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Awesome. So they will, including your report, it will all be submitted with the minutes.
Great, yes.
Team.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
It's excellent. You talked about contacting the Historical Society, and I know that you get real good support because she's been concerned about having some of this stuff in the library before. So, and I'm sure that she would have lots of answers, and she's really excited about all her history.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry, Vix.
big, yeah.
You might know who the mystery lady is.
Maybe she does. I know.
bet she does.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to reach out yet. But
No,
I'm
and
excited.
besides, they're limited hours, but she'd
Right.
really be helpful. And then just when the funding is concerned, we've got a number of very small trusts, very small trusts, that certainly this would be the kind of thing
Right.
that would be perfect for the use of those funds.
That's what we were thinking, and I want to talk to you, Matt, about past efforts in
Sure.
using the trusts and making sure that we, have or resurrect or create a policy for us to decide how to use those going forward. And I'm eager to maybe have that for a September conversation.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I would really like to put that as an action item,
Great,
that
yeah.
we get organized and
But,
that
you know,
information.
I do think if this subcommittee wants to do some kind of work over the summer, and you need funds,
Yeah.
I think we ought to be able to, I don't know if we wanted to make it an amount like $1,000 or $500 that would be available to that subcommittee. I'd certainly be willing to make that motion.
Right, and throw in like a
That would be useful.
conditional amount that could be
Yeah,
used.
for appropriate, what do you call it, storage of the historical artifacts, as opposed to Ziploc bags for a barrister bookcase,
Essentially, right.
for a potential barrister bookcase.
And that might be that might add to the expense, but the first $500 or so, is that enough?
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you, because what we're talking about, just to reiterate, because that was a lovely subcommittee gathering. I loved that there was so much participation, and Jean, thank you so much for getting in here early, and you set everything out at 7:30 in the morning. I appreciate that. Cynthia from the Friends came and she participated. She had a lot of input. What we talked about was, what I heard you say was the restoring frames. You talked about how attractive those plates were underneath the original frames, and to kind of recreate those, to kind of, maintain that sense of that history. And then we talked about the bookshelf. So the question, going back to what you just said, what do you think in terms, any ideas, if maybe we could give a motion for a certain amount or a range, like a certain, up to, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a good sense. I have no idea what restoration, Eric, maybe you have a better sense.
So in just thinking about documents, right, asset-free folders from, and Gaylord is kind of the standard. I mean, there are other companies that do them, but asset-free folders at the very least for some of these documents, just for long-term storage. But as far as, like the furniture, I have no idea.
Okay.
And I think it would just depend on how many folders we think we might need. Do we need boxes in order to keep those folders so you don't lay those folders flat, you keep them in boxes. I have some that, so that's the only reason why I say so. I would tend, they can be a little pricey sometimes,
yeah.
but I also, having seen some of these, I don't think we need a ton of them
Okay.
for right now.
They're very sturdy. I
Yes,
can actually show
they
you a
last
couple
for
if you want, because. We were
Well,
strict.
We can also, we don't have to do all of these at
No,
once,
no,
so
of
maybe we
course.
start with,
Sure.
the appropriate filing and then, and maybe looking into some restoration and framing here, because those feel like we want to protect those portraits. I don't know, I'm just trying to think of which of the
Well,
ones we want to
I'm
prioritize.
going to make a motion that you could spend up to $1,000 that would come out of those trust funds, the smaller trust funds, to be used as you see fit over the summer. That subcommittee sees fit without having to come back every time we need another $100 for something.
Okay.
So is it fair to say there would be that allocation, but maybe an estimate for the remaining that we could get over the summer so that we could think
Sure.
ahead? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think before spending money, we
Right.
could get the actual
Right,
cost of the
absolutely.
living
Sure.
Okay.
Agree.
Okay,
But at least you could, if you wanted to, get some of it done during the summer. You could.
absolutely.
Agree.
Second?
Exactly.
Go for it. All right, so that's second, just gonna do a quick, was that you, Vera?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So just for the minutes, it
Yeah.
was, what was the actual motion?
To set aside, allocate $1,000 for use in order to begin the process of restoration of library documents and historical artifacts. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
So I have first motion made by Matt, second Vera, Erica,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
and I absolutely unanimously support that 100%. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all that. You were just such a leader and you were so enthusiastic. It was awesome to have Annika and just all the dialogue. Like we were having so much fun with history and we were so excited and that's what learning is all about. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, and I think just before we move on, I wanted to hear, Jean, from you around just how best to coordinate on this going forward and making sure that we're in tight collaboration, so
Yeah.
that we're not obviously making decisions without knowing where things are gonna go.
Yeah, yeah, and I can also kind of pull out some of the acid-free boxes too. They come in all shapes and sizes and everything. Maybe that'll help you get a sense for what you should be looking at.
Okay,
Thank you. Happy to meet with you anytime.
okay, all right.
Awesome. Do you have a name for your subcommittee?
Well, you suggested, I think, like the beautification.
Whatever you call it, it's
The
yours.
library beautification.
Oh, are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, because I want to make sure we had a nice meeting with the town manager and the town clerk, and they just asked, and I respect this very much, in order to not cause confusion, if we have a subcommittee that we provide the title, who's the leader, and make sure that we post everything, that we're having that meeting and that it's open to the public. Excellent. Any other comments before we move to item number 5? No. Okay, item number 5, Vera.
It's me, okay. So, ahead of the last meeting, I had sent out a report that I had compiled. And the history to that report is that Mary has been urging all of us to go to other libraries to see what the other libraries have, how they compare to our library, just to kind of get a feel for it. And, we're all busy, but she finally dragged me to Webster, which is really so much wow. So much wow. It's huge. It's got all the people. It's got all the programs. It's got all the books. And I was really impressed. It's also a new building. And Webster, let me just say up front, is not a direct comp to us because they have a smaller budget. They have a larger population. But I was so amazed at what I saw and what they had that I hadn't seen around here. And I thought, oh my God, what is their budget? Because this is crazy. So I looked it up, and their budget was smaller than ours, by actually quite a bit. I thought, well, all right, maybe I don't understand something. So then I dragged Mary to Millbury.
Yeah, that was fun.
I did a little bit of research, because I'm a numbers geek, to see who were our comparable communities. So our nearest comps are Millbury and Sturbridge, in the sense that their demographics closely match ours. Median age, median income. Our population is a little higher, but we're very closely aligned, the three of us. So I said, all right, let's go to these other libraries and see where they stand compared to us. And what I saw was libraries that were very well stocked with books, robust programs, a good amount of staff, a good amount of volunteers. And I thought, okay, so what do they allocate? Because unlike Webster, which was dealing with a new building and a very active fundraising mechanism and everything else, these libraries were pretty comparable. Sturbridge most notably because we here are limited with regard to our footprint. We can't expand the space, but they have a comparable footprint. Like they have a prettier building, it's historic, but they can't expand it. So they have the same spatial constraints that we have. I found we have a larger budget than all of them. So it made me start digging. I went to Sturbridge without Mary, and I went to Millbury and looked at the tour of Webster. So Webster data was included in my report, but I wanted to bring it to the town manager's attention to say, like, hey, what's going on here? Like, they have, their books are stocked. We interviewed the staff. We interviewed the staff at every single library to see what are their staffing levels, how many volunteers do they have, how do they run, what is their books to empty space ratio, which for the record, I'm told is 70-30 is the goal across the board. Sturbridge is presently overstocked because they didn't lead as aggressively during COVID, so they're running 80-20, which actually results in a more fun space. Because you definitely walk in knowing whatever it is you want is certain to be there because there's so much of it. But it's very, very attractive. So I thought, well, why don't we have that? So I started taking pictures, we compiled all of the data, I presented it to the town manager. For example, our periodicals department, we're in a state of flux right now, we're doing the children's room. So I came into full disclosure from the very beginning, my first visit to the library, I found our periodicals department lacking. It was just anemic compared to what I had grown up seeing in other libraries. And I came to take a picture and kind of see if my memory was correct, and I was told it had been packed away temporarily during the expansion. However, it has not come back. In fact, the racks it used to live on went away, and it's been replaced by doctor's office style magazine holders that can hold maybe 2 issues max. Compared to Sturbridge, which has 60 unique magazine titles for adults, and compared to Millbury, which has 40 unique magazine titles for adults. We presently have 0, and we aspire to have a maximum, if I recall correctly, of 18, which would include children and adults. That to me is not, why are we falling behind with the kind of budget we have? I walked through the area and I took pictures. I did not bring a copy of the report. It was 40 pages with all the pictures. But compared to these other libraries, our shelves were bare. We had so much empty space. And even though we are in the process of moving, it's still a lot of bare shelves for a very prolonged amount of time. So my personal experience as a library patron is when I walk in here, I find things in spite of myself because I expect I won't find what I need because I'm just astonished at the amount of empty space. And I'm a lover of libraries, I am. But it really made me think, why are we falling behind? I looked at our programs because there's a heavy focus in this library on kids programs. We have fewer program offerings for kids than anyone else. Our kids area also lags behind in the sense that they have better spaces, more things. Millbury is a bigger space, so it is what it is. Sturbridge, all of them have better decoration, more modern furniture. So I went back for a second interview with Sturbridge because they have the same challenges that we had. They actually got a space planner. They invested a lot of money in a space planner to figure out how to maximize their tiny footprint because they had no option to expand. They gave me the name of the space planner. That person went in and reconfigured their space to make it visually attractive. They have appealing bookshelves. They have a great floor layout. Their periodicals are in a place where they're eye-catching, for example. They have genre stickers, which we have, but the placement is like cute. Which I know is like a little detail, but you know, I have a somewhat of a retail background, so I know when you look at stuff, you want it to be visually appealing. But they did tell me they made that investment, and it was a game changer for them. I didn't question Millbury as much just because they were bigger. And Webster, by the way, although I didn't count their magazines, their periodicals, they have a devoted room. So I would just say they blew us out of the water on that too. Now, for context, right, because the point of my report, and I'm trying to give a description mostly because I did not come with pictures, the point of my report was just to say our budget is substantially larger. However, of our budget, we allocate a smaller percentage to our materials. We allocate 14%, whereas Millbury does 16%, Webster does 15%, and Sturbridge does a whopping 19% of their budget to materials. I don't think that quite explains the disparity because even so, our budget, for the numbers I pulled, this is not the most recent data, but it trends for everybody. So from the year I looked at, we had allocated 97,000, Millbury allocated 83,000, Sturbridge had 113,000 because they're giving a bigger percentage, right? However, our budget still comes in ahead. In fairness to Jean, when I met with the town manager, because the library is not fully staffed, part of the budget has been given back, but the materials portion is maxed out, as it should be, right? We all want a robust library. So basically, the conclusion of my report was if the town of Auburn is allocating so much money to this resource for the town people, why are we not keeping up with our comparable communities, right? This is a resource for our community. People want to find books. People want to have programs. This is why I've been pushing on adult programs. And Jean did send us a thing about adult programming, although I have to say, all of these libraries had their programs advertised everywhere, colorful flyers on the desk, in the elevator, on the door, as you walk in, and a mailing list. And they had a lot of adult offerings. They had cooking book classes and butter making and drawing and craziness that I just don't see here. And we'll get to the adult programming later. But the point is, if as a board of trustees member, I don't know about our adult programming, how many people in our community know about our adult programming? So that is kind of where we're at with the report. Mary and I met with Ed and Dory. We went over the numbers where it was like, I mean, if we're giving money back, there's money to do more than what we're doing, but why are, yes, did you have a question? Okay.
We're listening actively.
We recommended a space planner, but we really recommended a thorough look at the data to find out why we had so much less. And honestly, we have less across the board, right? Kids programming, the decorations, which Lindsay has, which the beautification committee has covered, books, periodicals, you name it, we're falling behind. Why are we falling behind? Staffing, which is in the goals, and you know that is getting worked on as well. But my whole thing was somebody needs to start looking at this more carefully to make sure that we are targeting our funds adequately. Oh, I do have to say, Auburn does stand out in one area. We have the most museum passes of anybody. And I do think museum passes are valuable, but I don't know that that makes up for the lack of actual physical stuff in the physical space we have. So the next thing I wanted to do, one, I would love to have a discussion about this, but I also want to send this report to the select board and to the finance committee so that they can consider whether perhaps we should be allocating more money to materials, or whether they too want to take a closer look at the numbers and find out how are we outspending our peer libraries and continuously ending up with less. Something doesn't add up in terms of where are we putting our resources, not to mention we are very aware of the kids' programming and the kids' materials and the kids, all the kids' stuff. But that hits 10% of the Auburn population, and I'm really interested in hitting the remaining 90%. So that's the one that we can move the reports. We can share the reports with the finance committee and the select board, because I'm told we need to vote on that. And two, if anybody else wants to contribute, have a discussion, so on and so forth.
I think my only concern is I want to make sure anything that we're forwarding is a we are forwarding.
Yeah, exactly.
So I, first of all, commend you on your research, and I love that you finally let me bring you out to different libraries. The next one's going to be Leicester, by the way, we promised. But I just want to make sure, like one of the things that I said in the beginning of the meeting was, this was not as much of a democratic environment before. It felt very competitive. It felt very difficult. So I just want to make sure that whatever we're recommending, we're discussing it completely, everybody's on board, we're voting on whatever we decide to do with it, but that it's not coming from me, it's not coming from an individual, it's not to you, yeah, right? So I'm gonna open that up. I welcome Jean or any members of the board if you want to discuss this. I'll open it up for discussion. Matt?
I appreciate the work that you did on
Yeah.
that.
Thank you.
Very, very interesting. I think the subcommittee, maybe taking a look at the data and just making sure that we're comparing everything,
Okay.
equally
Okay.
between each community. Before, I think it's good for us, but before we send that to the Board of Selectmen, I'd like to see if maybe a subcommittee would be interested in just taking a look at, is there sufficient data there, comparable data between these libraries? And what you've said, there certainly seems to be.
Yeah.
But I think that before I would send it to them, I just think you've got to have some eyes, and I'd like to ask some questions on it, and I'd be happy to send those to you, some of the comparative things. But I really think it was an important step
I do, I agree.
to start this process, because we know that the visual, as you go into some of these other places, is pretty stark.
Yeah.
And so, but I'd like to make sure before we do anything with the Board of Selectmen that we've got our data in a real comparative form.
We got,
And,
we got our data.
well, see, I bet I don't have all that.
It's part of the report. It's just,
Is it? Okay.
it should be. I'll go over it. But it has our total budget, our library materials budget, the director's salary. I didn't get into the minutia of non-director because that gets a little bit like in the weeds. We have the state aid each library receives. We receive the most out of all of them. And in fairness, Webster is here for a little bit of context because they have less and they are able to do more, but they're not a direct comp. But I do have the demographic data as well, including median income, median age, population, and population breakdown.
I would support the idea of the subcommittee to explore deeper, but I also liked the subcommittee, the WE, the pronoun we. I liked the fact that there was a discussion, there was, what are the possible recommendations that we would make, and then the full body discussion. Like, that feels very complete to me. So I'm going to open that up to anyone else that has comments about that.
I think I agree to your point, Mary, just that formulating a cohesive, coherent, like unified recommendation as opposed to just sending the report, which is helpful and it gives a lot of data and context, but it lacks the like, well, what do you want us to what are we going to say? Kind of thing. And so that to me is I think the one area that I would think would just be it would lend a stronger voice to presenting it to other committees.
So do we want to do a subcommittee to review the data and compile some recommendations that we would like both boards to consider?
And I think maybe, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think deciding as a subcommittee if there's more data that we have to explore. But I also, going back to the point that you just made, Lindsay, I think in a constructivist approach, I don't want to present to the select board that we're bringing up a problem versus bringing up some comparing different libraries and saying, are we doing the best for our patrons? Are we doing the best? These are our recommendations. So I would support anybody that wants to make a motion on a subcommittee with understanding that, as we said later in the notes, we are naming that subcommittee. We are, agreeing what the goals of that subcommittee are, and then we will report out on it in September. Does that work for people?
Yeah, and I mean, in the spirit of transparency, it's kind of one of these things like when you look deep into the data, when you stand in each of the three libraries, ours, Millbury, and Sturbridge, setting Webster aside as not a direct comp, but a good example of what is possible. When you stand in the three, it feels like a hair on fire situation, and so there is an impetus to kind of get eyes on it to say, all right, we need to fix whatever's happening. But I'm totally willing to do a subcommittee and take a more thorough and thought out approach and gather more data if that would be helpful, because I'm just one person and I'm not the only person.
I don't know that more data, but maybe it would be. And the other thing in the recommendations, I think it is helpful when you give a report to have some kind of recommendations.
Yep.
There.
So I think that's, you've done a lot of good work.
I agree, 100%. I appreciate it so much.
In that case, I'd like to be on the subcommittee.
I was going to say, would you be willing to lead it?
I would be willing.
Okay, so let's vote on it first, and then you tell me what the name is of it, and then other people that want to be involved, that would be awesome. So do we have a motion to create let me clarify, and correct me if I say it incorrectly. What we're voting on is to create a subcommittee to explore the findings of Vera's research and provide discussion and recommendations to move it to, first to the board, for us to approve it, and then for it to go to possibly go to the select board. Is that correct?
So moved.
So move. So do I have Matt as one? Yes? Is it your motion? Okay. All right, so Matt is yes, and do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And I'm just gonna do a quick roll call. Matt is yes. Erica?
Yes.
Vera?
Yes.
Awesome. Lindsay's a yes. Mary DeCourcy's a yes, so that's unanimous. Do you have a name for your subcommittee? We can go to the next item if you want to think about it. 'Cause you have-
I'm not that creative. I'm a
Okay.
creative girl.
All right, so you're gonna lead the subcommittee. Would anybody else like to participate in this subcommittee?
I would.
Excellent. You know what, I'm gonna volunteer too, because I'm so excited about visiting libraries and talking about libraries, that if that's okay,
Yeah.
unless I don't wanna bump anybody else out, okay. Awesome, so we're moving.
Matt, since you wanted a subcommittee, did you want to be on the subcommittee?
I have another one I'd like to be
Oh,
on.
okay. All right.
Propose that a little bit.
All right, stir it upon the run, that's all right.
Yes, sorry, so before we move, does anybody have any other comments about this vote, this discussion?
Do we want any further discussion on the report, which is fine,
Yeah.
which is okay, this is a good
So
place.
my
for that.
comment is that I'm working on a response with the town manager as requested by council.
Okay.
That's my
Okay.
response.
Okay,
As requested by who?
Council.
Town council?
town council? Okay. Town council or labor council? It's two different people. Okay, there's two different entities, one for the town and one for the employees, okay. So the next item on the agenda, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is volunteers at the APL. What is the current status? We collectively got an email from the Assistant Town Manager, Dory Vecchio, and she requested that if we're discussing this, that we discuss it, but we're very careful that what the town manager's office is giving the green light on is, I don't remember the name of it, but it's a volunteer program for people who are seniors. Do you
To
remember
work
that?
off their taxes.
What's it
The
called?
tax work off program.
Oh, it's work off, thank you. So that's to give seniors $1,500 credit in their taxes. So that's something that they've already given a green light. The assistant town manager cautioned us in this discussion that it's factual, but that anything related to volunteers that would in any way impact employees has to be something that the town manager and the assistant town manager discuss with the union first, and that they give us the green light. So I think the factual piece of it, I think we're given a green light to talk about. Any questions that you have specific to that? But in terms of, as a board, I think we can't advocate without making sure that we respect the requests of the town manager, that we check in with the union, which is only appropriate. So,
Jerry, I'd like to make a recommendation that we write a policy on volunteers.
okay,
And that would include those cautionary statements.
okay.
I'd be happy to put something together that it won't take that long,
Okay,
because I've seen them from some of the other places we talked about this
Okay.
the last 2 years.
so are you recommending a subcommittee or a
No.
discussion? Okay,
I'd like to just bring back something that people can argue. about.
policy, okay,
Policy, it'd be pretty simple.
If I may interject, there's a part of the collections policy we need to update anyway,
Yes.
since we just veered into collections, and I will add, because in my interviews of everybody, I'm told nobody tracks what they read. So we
Okay.
should probably remove that, that's another thing.
okay,
But also, it has been suggested to us that we write a more specific and thorough periodicals policy. So
Right.
there are a couple of tweaks to collections, so why don't you and I meet the collections, collections.
subcommittee, so that would be just,
Already exist.
correct, so that would just reconvene that committee.
Yeah, that would
Okay.
just reconvene the committee as we
Okay.
make the change Matt is proposing.
Okay.
the Periodicals change and the removal of the leading language.
Collections committee, subcommittee.
On the collections policy
Subcommittee, correct.
You're welcome.
That was neat. Excellent. Okay, any further questions, discussion about that, or you just want to move to that?
Are you
Okay.
okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Right after that, then
I'm okay with
we'll
that.
talk about it in September.
But again, I just going back to the we statement, I think that you're writing it and you're presenting it to the board and we're discussing it before we're voting and moving it anywhere. right?
And I had asked about volunteers, because we've gotten some conflicting information, and so I am curious what the defined status is. And just for context, initially we had brought it up as part of the senior tax write-off program, because it's really important for the community, but also for high school kids to get credits.
Yep.
In our last meeting, we had mentioned college kids, but we did not include that in any sort of goal. That was taken off and is off the table. So I am curious on what the status of the library taking volunteers is. And if the library has any policies around it, we just want to know where we're starting.
We have always participated when there were people available with the senior tax write-off. We've done that for a number of years. The last couple of years, there wasn't anybody available. I have an agreement with the union rep, as long as library staff are also okay with it, that we give a couple of hours, or depending on what they need, to students in the Auburn schools, or if they live in Auburn, go to another school. If they're looking for some hours for their scholarship or National Honor Society or something like that. And that's worked out very well. The staff is always aware of it. They, at any time, the union could decide they don't want to do that anymore, but they're very, going pretty well with getting that done. It's not a lot. We don't recruit. We absolutely would not want to recruit. And the union would not allow us to recruit. So they come here and they meet with me and we work something out, because we always want to be, helpful to the Auburn students.
Thank you, Jean. Any other comments or questions?
For historical context,
Yep.
for everybody, including, the public watching, based on ERIS reporting, in 2017, this library reported 104 volunteer hours for the year. In 2018, it was 52 hours. In 2019, it was 63 hours for the year. In 2021 and 22, there were no hours. Obviously, we have the COVID state of emergency, so that's completely normal. And in 2023, there were 43 hours. So it would appear the definitive answer is yes, there are volunteers within the parameters of what fits into the union contract. But that way we can kind of establish that they exist.
Mm-hmm.
We managed to not step on toes, because Jean takes the volunteers in the way that is acceptable.
Thank you. Any other commentary about that?
So I could also mention the Friends are the volunteer group. We certainly, they're always looking for volunteers. Anybody who wants to volunteer, the Friends are more than happy to welcome them into what they do for the library, which is considerable.
Does the Friends work for the tax write-off?
No.
Okay. I mean, that's the biggest concern here, is making sure that that is available for the residents, because, during tight times, we want that opportunity available to seniors who
And I
qualify.
work with the senior center director on that.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have any greater volunteer group than the Friends, that's for sure.
Sounds work.
That's enough? Okay. Just want to make sure. Does anybody have any comments about that? Very good. Just thank you so much for letting me move us along. So before we move on to the director's report, I wanted to make sure.
We're on number 7.
Prior objective, yes, sir. That's what I wanted to get to.
Oh,
So, yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke. What I meant to say is before we move on to the director's report, I really want us to prioritize what goals we want to accomplish for next year. I only listed a few of them on the report, but I think we need to move forward in the direction of subcommittees to accomplish what we want. So tonight, I was excited to hear that Lindsay's going to take the lead on the APL Unification Subcommittee. The volunteer policy will be examined by the reconvening of the Collections Policy Subcommittee. And then we discussed, of course, volunteers, but I know that there's a number of other items related to goals that members of the board want to discuss. So if you could just discuss the goals first, and then what your vision is, if in fact we were to move forward with the subcommittee, or how we move forward. I'd like to hear that, and then we could vote on it if there's a vote.
I'd like to talk about the library of things. And what I'd like to do is to establish a board of trustees subcommittee with community members to design a program for a library of things based on the current professional library literature and other local libraries, and using community surveys, social media, and other appropriate methods to determine interest from the Auburn community. The subcommittee would also explore funding resources for the Library of Things. I would propose that we have 2 trustees, someone from the town manager's office, a person from the Friends, and some other Auburn resident who might not have as much involvement with the library, but some other local resident. So that would be only 5 people on that subcommittee, so that it'd be manageable. But it would be to take a look at some of the materials that we've reviewed in the past on the Library of Things. You know, it's funny, one of the things I think, Mary, you'd mentioned before, hotspots. And I've gotten a huge amount of material on hotspots, and I'm wondering, have we ever considered hotspots?
We did sort of an in-person survey. I also look at all the comments from other libraries who are using hotspots. There's very little interest in our library, and then you have to also consider that you've got to, you have to contract with that because you've got to pay for it, and a lot of them are lost, and so libraries kind of like pulling back on that because they don't return them. So there's a lot of issues. I'm not saying you wouldn't consider it again, but at the time there wasn't, and we weren't ready to go forward at that point with the Library of Things, which we are now. When we're working on it this summer.
Yeah, I've gotten material from the Worcester Public Library, from Boston, from Springfield, and it seems pretty enthusiastic. So, but it's true, we probably need to, on any of the things we do some surveys to see if people in the community are interested or not interested. But I thought that was really important because it certainly does extend the internet to more families that might not be able to have it. And the libraries set pretty strong policies on it. I don't know how easy it is to enforce them. I've not talked to anyone at these places, but when you lose something like that, you pay for it.
Right. I will say that I reached out, unrelated to Library of Things, but that was a follow-up question. I was asked by my principal to go out and literally door to door raise funds for field trips for this school year because we ran out of ESSER's funding, which paid for a lot of things that weren't out of a natural budget after COVID. So I did ask the question about specifically how did they start the Library of Things? That was my lead question. I was asking for leads about how to get out and get donations, but I said, do you mind if I ask you, because I know we're going to discuss it in an upcoming meeting, like what he did is he brought out the hotspot. He showed it to me. It was encased, sort of like a transistor radio back in the old days. Everything was right there. You open it up. He stated that they lend it for 2 weeks, then they keep it back for 1 week so that they can recharge it, and they don't allow people to consecutively borrow it for more than one. But he said it was a huge popular thing in Webster, which of course as far as economics, it's a very challenged community. I didn't ask if whether or not things got broken or lost or whatever. But I would say that he encouraged us very strongly, if we want to start a Library of Things, that was the item that would really draw attention to the fact that we could lend things out for free and people could have access to Wi-Fi at their houses.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
You know what? I made a mistake in this motion. Would be also a person from the library, staff library.
Okay. So you said 2 trustees, 1 from the town manager's office,
Yeah.
2 friends, and at least
one friend,
one
one
friend.
Auburn resident, and then
one Auburn. I missed that.
one from the Auburn Public Library staff
Okay.
person.
Okay. Any other comments about the idea of subcommittee on a Library of Things? Would you like to make a motion on that, sir?
I'd like to make a motion to establish a Board of Trustees subcommittee with community members to design a program for a Library of Things based on the current professional library literature and other local libraries, and using community surveys, social media, and other appropriate methods to determine interest from the Auburn community. The subcommittee would also explore funding resources for the Library of Things. You know, when I did a little bit more reading for this for today, this won't happen in a week or two. because you really have to think pretty carefully. You've got to do that community survey, because if no one is interested in it, it's really useless to really get excited about moving forward with it. We've got to find out. There's a whole list of things that are possible, and you can point those out and ask people if there's something that they'd be interested in. If they're not interested in any of that, well, then we can use the energy someplace else.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen interest via Facebook groups, because we have a number of our own Facebook groups in the library of things, in the sense that people talk about, oh, hey, this town has one. Oh, hey, that town has one. Why can't we have one, right? But then I think what's great about the subcommittee you're proposing is that you have such a broad cross-section of people that they can all talk to different people and find different ways to collect the data. So, you know, like, I'm all like, yay, label maker, but somebody else might be like, a hand mixer would be fantastic.
So would that be part of the subcommittee, would be sending out a survey
Yes.
to Auburn Rev? Okay. Any other comments, questions, suggestions?
Who would be the other trustee person that might be interested?
I would be really interested. Well, you know, because I'm really interested in surveying
Good.
people anyway, unless I don't want to step on anyone's toes. Yeah, I'd be very interested.
Well, we post meetings anyway.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
We get whatever feedback we need.
Again, any other comments, questions? Okay, do you want to make a motion on that, Matt?
Just did
You just did. All right, who's got a second?
I've already got it written.
Is that you? Who's
No.
the second?
I'll second.
All right, just gonna do a quick roll to call. Matt is a yes, Eric is a yes, Vera,
Yes,
Lindsay,
Yes.
Mary's a yes, so that's unanimous. So we now have our subcommittees on beautification, volunteer policy, which is part of the collections policy, and we have libraries of things. Does anyone have any others that you'd like to prior?
I have to name mine, I know.
Yeah.
I mean,
We've established it, we've seen it.
Well, we called it a collection policy. Do you wanna,
No, I mean, I think I could name my report, The Health of the Auburn Public Library, because that's really what it was about.
Okay.
We all want the same thing.
okay,
So how healthy is the library?
Okay.
Whatever, in the big scheme of things.
okay.
But as far as goals, you know, one thing that I'm curious about, we put on the goals, reestablishing the periodicals. This is the favorite department. See, I will keep looping back around to it because I'm always cognizant of its absence. But to my earlier point, the periodicals as it used to be was very thin and not enticing to the community, as evidenced by the fact that, you know, Jean has reported in the past that just wasn't getting a lot of traction. The stuff there wasn't getting a lot of interest. My personal feeling is that the answer to that is not to get rid of it, but to get what, you know, the community wants to see.
More information.
And I think that, you know, we would do well to gather that information, whether, you know, if you're looking at 40 unique titles, like we even threw out, I think, Mary, I believe you posted a question about the Auburn Public Library,
Indeed.
not about periodicals, right? I mean, you posted some other question and then people were coming in there with like, I'd really like to see
Right.
Pioneer Woman Magazine. I'd
Right,
really
right.
like to see whatever. So we got
Clean,
really,
clean eating. Like there were some
Yeah.
really interesting suggestions, things that I wouldn't think about.
I think you asked broadly, what would you like to see in the
Yeah,
library?
that's right.
And a lot of things centered around periodicals,
Yeah.
whether it was large print or a particular newspaper or particular titles, things that we wouldn't necessarily think of. But I think that if we can come together and maybe make life easier for the library director to say, like, we've surveyed the community, here's what people want. Let's see if we can put our resources into it. That way, you know, money isn't wasted getting, like, say, Life Magazine, and then nobody wants to look at Life Magazine because they want to know about fishing, gardening, and cooking.
So I'm gonna call that the collections policy with the focus on the health of the library. That's what you said.
No,
Collections
no.
policies are different.
Yeah, we have, the collections
Okay.
policy subcommittee exists.
Yep.
And I will reconvene, and
Okay.
you as a member are welcome.
Okay, that was the
Yeah.
that was the volunteer one. I screwed
That
that
one
up.
exists.
Okay.
And then I have the health of the public library. That's the report where
Thank
we will come up with recommendations to send with the report when we are ready to move the report forward. And this was to your goals.
Yep.
Maybe we can get a list of the periodicals that the community wants to see so that we can make sure that it is well used and well loved and robust and
Okay.
appropriate when it is reestablished,
Okay.
which is a goal and has a deadline anyway.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, my fault.
Yeah, that volunteer policy, we're gonna talk about it the same way we did with the collection development, but it's not really connected to that at all.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's separate. I mean, you know.
Trying to figure out what the connection might be, but
Maybe,
it's a policy.
maybe
Yeah.
just rebrand it to policy development subcommittee.
There you go, there you go.
We have the collections policy, and although we voted to accept it, it is a living document
Sure.
to be continuously updated as we see fit, or as we find that something isn't a thing
Yeah.
that we put in there, like tracking leading, which every librarian I spoke to was, that would be like making a list of what you declutter, and it's like, fair, I will stop asking.
Well, just as it's, you have to make a list of what you declutter, because you're decluttering it. You're taking it out of the system. So I don't know that it's a separate step, but I don't really care. But,
Yeah, it was just one of these things where we have it in there, but nobody seems to do it. I asked every librarian. And they all took a deep breath and looked at me very patiently. So I was like, okay, all right, maybe we redirect and rethink what the goal of such an endeavor is. But all of that falls under policy. They're all policies. They live in one document. And so multiple things, one name.
Okay. And just for clarification, because it was an email that we shared, but it's not necessarily anyone who's viewing who hasn't been part of the email. We were asked by the town clerk to name our subcommittee so it didn't appear that we were changing our membership to our committee. So I just want to make that very clear that when we have a membership, that's the membership. We also welcome other people to participate. But in terms of, we wanted to make sure that it didn't appear that we had this flexible membership of subcommittees. What were you going to say, Matt?
Well, are we finished with that topic?
Yes, sir. And unless anybody has anything else.
Talk about goals on the
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah, priority.
We have not done anything with, I had to ask Lindsay today to send me a copy of the work that she and Steve, and I don't know who else,
Oh, yeah.
Indira, did on the tactics.
Oh, the tactics. Thank you for
And
reminding.
I know we can't do much of this tonight
No. But we can set it up though, so that we're going to discuss it though.
in September.
Yeah.
But you know what I was thinking, sadly, I don't know how much further evaluation of this one is going to be able to be done because so little that was done.
Right,
And we got the new one to think about.
right.
So, but at least I think this is helpful even in the planning
Okay.
of the next document. I thought this was very helpful.
And that was actually the idea. That was something Steve advocated for very firmly, that these prompts for reporting out on the strategic plan status was not just about this current plan, but actually forward thinking and how do we frame out the next plans that we ensure closer collaboration and that maybe an easier format for reporting so that we have and can establish going forward and just start fresh, right? New way forward on reporting out on the strategic plan. And I mean, my gut is that a lot of this is gonna remain, right? A lot of these are still very applicable today, not because we didn't necessarily achieve them, but because they're just the right things to continually strive for a library. So I suspect that the work here will not be wasted, and I agree with Phelps, sort of like we never quite got around to debating this for the current strategic plan reporting, but I think it sets us up well for the next structuring of the next plan. So
do you think that maybe you and Vera could report out in September on that? Well, like, that's your subcommittee. It's the tactics, for the strategic plan.
yeah, we could reconvene around it and think about how to kind of bring this forward, right, into the next strategic planning exercise.
Right, like look at what we've done and what we want to carry into the next round and what perhaps takes a back seat to something that might be more present.
Okay. And I did agree with the town clerk that when we communicate that the meetings are going to happen, that I will send the template to whomever the lead is, and that you submit. All we need to do is submit, 2 days before we meet. I try to do more than 2 days, but to post it, and all it would need to say is the subcommittee on this, that we convene, that we explore, and then we adjourn. That's all that needs to say, but that we would get that to the town clerk to make sure that we're very transparent.
I think in a way, each of us that we've had those subcommittees ought to be responsible for
Yeah.
doing that, so you don't have that plus everything else.
Yes,
But-
agreed. I just want to make sure we can communicate it so we're not stepping on each
Yeah.
other's toes or not communicating. So far, what I'm looking at is 6. Any other add-ons in terms of, and again, this would look like goals for next year and the awareness that we may break out into teams and come up with more concentrated efforts and then bring it back to the body.
Question,
Yes.
so with the periodicals thing and gathering information, are we just gonna informally do that and compile a list? Do we want a work group, subcommittee, or kinda?
Doesn't that fall under the health and good library
That's what I was
subcommittee and
And
drawing
survey.
on that
Yeah.
report, and that's part of the recommendations.
So now, just to expand on that, because going back to allocating funding or whatever, what do you think that you would need in terms of to be able to reach out to our patrons and find out what it is? Like if we were gonna do a survey, what would that need to look like? Would that be, well, my question is, would that look like, postcards that we need to fund? Would that look like, what would that look like?
I honestly think community engagement through social media is
Okay.
really, really effective because because people will throw things out there. Like your post was active for quite
Yeah,
a while.
really
It
was.
only went up on one group and not all the groups.
Yeah.
But as more people comment, it pops up on other people's feeds and then they follow up where they're like, gosh, I came and there were like no magazines, and then you say like, well, what do you want to see? And suddenly they chime in and their 3 friends chime in.
Right.
So I think just communicating with people or wherever we are in the community, really engaging with people, what do you want to see? As well as talking to other area libraries to say like, what is most popular in your community? Like, is Cape Cod Magazine really the win when you're out here? I don't know, maybe. And maybe not at the top of my head, but it gets checked out pretty frequently everywhere else. Okay, they know something we don't. That's all right.
Any other comments?
The only other comment I have, Mary, is have you heard from the town manager's office about the goals that we sent in for the library director?
Yes, we had actually, Vera and I met with the town manager a couple weeks ago and the assistant town manager, and they are working through the goals. They're under examination. Am I correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I
But
believe,
they received them and they were discussing them at that time.
I thought they accepted them. I thought they wanted us to make the goals, vote on the goals, and then they were gonna move forward based on our goals.
Okay.
That was my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
I don't recall any,
Specific language.
I don't recall anything in that appeared to be a no or.
Yeah.
I think it was our job to set the goals,
Yeah.
because it is our
Yeah,
role to set
right.
the goals.
Right.
And once we vote to finalize them, the town manager carries them forward as things to.
As our recommendation.
Yeah.
And again, it's up to the town manager what he implements, but our role as a board is to make recommendations.
Our role as the board is actually to set the goals,
That's right.
like definitively.
Yep.
And then vote on them. And so we did our task. My understanding is that's got a vote on it and is moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
If
Thank you.
anybody tells us otherwise, that's great, but for now, that was pretty much where I believe it is.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Right, but I am the open policy one.
Yes, you are. Thank goodness. Okay.
Mary, I
Yeah.
have 2 questions.
Yes.
So one on the strategic plan tactics subcommittee.
Yeah, yeah.
How's that? Since Steve is no longer a member of the board, I guess opening it up to see if anyone else would like to.
Yeah, I was
join
hoping that you would.
endeavor with Vera and I.
Yeah.
I have to say, wait, and just a point of clarification. It was clarified to us by Ginger that because of the way we arranged our meetings and ran our meetings, we were technically a work group and not a subcommittee.
Sure.
Which, tomato, we still got the work done. It's because,
Oh,
it's okay.
that's interesting.
Well, because if you're a subcommittee, you meet in one of the public spaces, like the Merriam Room, and you put out an agenda and
Yep.
you send the notice so that members of the community can come. But in fact, what we did, and we did not vote to accept, we just worked on a thing and then we brought it back to the committee, we met at Dunkin' Donuts. We pulled it together, we sat there and we hammered out how do the tactics translate into questions upon which one can be evaluated. So Ginger said, technically, this is a subcommittee, or rather a work group, which follows different rules.
it would be so much easier as a work group. I mean, I'd still post things because you're not hiding anything.
Yeah.
But it's just so complicated. Make sure it's a few days ahead of time to make sure that you put in your minutes. I
Yeah,
wonder if we can get a clarification from her on
I
it.
have a clarification. I'll send it out. I
Okay.
didn't bring my notebook, but I took notes because I was like, the reason I asked was when we met, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't breaking rules because she was very clear.
Yeah.
Subcommittee members can't change, the subcommittee name can't change
Right.
unless someone, of course, leaves the board and we
Yeah.
get a new member and we have like a vacancy. And we have to do the agenda and the notice and it's open to the public, right? And I was like, well, I think I broke rules. And she was like, no. That is a work group. What you guys did is fine. There's a little bit more nuance and I'll send it over. Even I can report out on it at our next meeting. I just didn't bring the right notes. I don't remember.
So do you think since you and Suzette were the driving force between the strategic plan that you'd like to fill that void that Steve left when he stepped down? Is that a loaded question?
Okay, but I'm not going to share it.
Would one of you chair it?
I wrote it up. I'll
I don't know.
Awesome. Because you have the whole history.
Yeah,
It would be
Okay, I'll
awesome
be
if you would.
happy.
Awesome.
just, yeah.
But like, this is a good thing to just sit and hammer out. So this could be a work group,
Right.
right? And I mean, really, in that case, all you need is one person to say, hey, when do y'all want to meet? Whereas a subcommittee for some of those things, particularly where we might like community feedback, might be advantageous to put out there and say like, hey, we're going to meet in the history room so that the public knows and can come in and weigh in on like periodicals, for lack of a better thing, since that's all about getting feedback or,
Kind of interesting.
you know.
Once we have that definition, I think I would advocate for at least this phase for this to be a working group, just because I think a lot has already been done
Yeah,
in the working group. And I think we wouldn't be ready to necessarily come with recommendations and communicate that. That would need to be a next phase as we head into the next strategic plan. So we're not proposing the next strategic. We're just going to workshop these tactics a bit more in the current context. So if that could be a working group, that would be great. And then it would be presented to the public in the September meeting. Okay. My second question was, so someone just said something about the mandate of the board. And I have been thinking about this because as the newest member and someone who came in without any context, I had an open question, like, do we have a handbook? Do we have a board book would be really helpful. And obviously there's a lot of resources on the NBLC website, but I understand there's some differentiation, there's some nuance in how Auburn's board is structured based on Auburn's bylaws and things. And so I don't know exactly what that looks like. Maybe it's a working group, internally with the board to start to compile something that would be both onboarding for new members, but also I think it's
A handbook.
a handbook. Yeah, the MBLC has some great resources, a really nice outline on how to kind of personalize it, and so you say, okay, the MBLC is the master, and then we only document what is different, right? And we're not recreating wheels, but I just would find that so useful, and I think it would help really professionalize and help us to operate more clearly so that we're not constantly having to revisit these questions.
Right.
So what is the mandate? What is the role? So
I think you're right about that, and I think it's been clarified in a very different way in the past year, 6 months.
Yeah.
But there's no reason that we can't take a look at a couple of the handbooks and then have a conversation before we get too deep into it with the town manager.
right, yeah.
But I think you're absolutely right, because each of us come out without any real information.
Yeah, and it's hard because you read the MBLC resources, but then you're not sure. I'm not sure still where the line is, and I think we should very clearly define it. I think it can only benefit all of us.
No, I think it would be really helpful to outline like what our roles are, like goal setting, for example. That is a key role that we do for policy making, right? We're a policy making body. And then the nuances within the MBLC are things like there's this really fantastic document on what the Board of Trustees does, but they also recommend for effective meetings meeting beforehand over dinner to discuss the issues, which for us would be an open meeting violation because we are not a private library and some are, you know? So parsing that out, or the difference between a subcommittee and a work group or members that come after us.
So did you want to participate? I don't want to make you lead another thing, but so whether it's a workbook or a subcommittee, that's a goal that you would like to see us explore. And would anybody?
I'd help with that.
Okay, okay,
Okay.
awesome. Awesome, and thank you for bringing that
Yeah,
up.
I think keeping it as a work group, it's something we're gonna
Yeah.
just do our research and
Yep.
we can compile and then come back to the board and then
Make
we can
recommendations.
we can go from there.
I love
Yeah,
that.
a lot of the communities have those, and we can also contact some of the communities that might have a difference from the Mass General laws on libraries. You know, I forgot, there was some other, we talked about some other policies. I know about the periodicals. What about library hours? Gotten a few questions about how many 4-day closures we have, and then evening hours.
Okay,
I think those are things that we ought to have a conversation about.
okay, so that's gonna be a goal, but not necessarily a subcommittee.
Right.
Okay.
That's actually covered in my Health of the Library
Okay.
report because Millbury and Sturbridge, their hours match pretty
Okay.
much. And our hours differ, but when we talk about, you know, visions and moving forward and how to best serve the community, we can talk about, do we really benefit from having smaller hours, like shorter hours on Saturdays when a lot of people might be doing weekend activities
Right.
during the hours that the library's open, or, you know, if everybody's open till 8 and we're closing at 7. Is that the kind of questions you're
Yeah,
getting?
that's exactly, okay, especially the 7 o'clock closing. I mean, you can't really do programs.
Right.
And if, you know, when Steve started talking about some cultural issues and the rest, what are you gonna do? Have people skip dinner and come at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock instead of being able to be open until 8, at least 8?
That sounds like a great survey question too, like I love the surveys.
That was literally a comment on your Facebook post. Somebody had said, I
Yeah.
wish this library was open later until 8 like everybody else's because then I could come after dinner. And right now I can't. So that's something to consider, because obviously there is staff who want to go home, respect that. But it's like Sturbridge and we operate for the same amount of hours. We're each at 51, I counted. But they're spread out differently in order to maximize available times for when people might want to go to the library. They actually have really broad Saturday hours, and I think they're closed on a weekday, I'm not sure, but I have the data.
So just a point of clarification, just for anybody who's not part of the board, is that we were given very different information about what our role was for many years. So I will give credit to the town manager, Ed Casanovich, and Dory Vecchio, that they've met with us to clarify completely what our goals are, what we have, what is our purview, for lack of a better way to say it, and how to stay, as they've made it very clear, how to stay off subjects that will put us in a place where we might be considered not respecting the union rights. So I just want to clarify, and thank you for clarifying the point about the recommendations, because again, I've been on the board now for 6 years, and I've had varying information that the town manager and the assistant town manager has been generous. They've been generous to go over any questions we had and clarify. So thank you. For anybody else have any points or questions before we give Jean the floor for the library director report? Okay, so we're going to move on to item number 8. Jean, you've been very patient. Thank you.
So, just a couple things about facilities. And number one is I had sent you update number 12 about the children's room expansion, so we'll just go over this quickly. It does continue to progress. A lot of we're waiting for. Actually, got another one installed today, another bookcase. So DPW's been working very hard on those as they bring those in. When you look down on the left, those hopefully within the next couple of weeks, the rest of those will be finished. And then there are about 5,000 books in those cases that are currently on the floor. Those will all go on the wall, and those cases will come out. And so then we'll be able to add in some seating. There's a big technology board that's going on the wall. There's no room for anybody to use it right now. And a number of other things. So we kind of wait. And then on the other side right now, where we have all the movable racks, that's going to take them a while. These are custom made, but it does take them a while. As they move forward with all of those, then those will also go, against the wall. We do have a number of other things in the queue. Some of them take a while to come in anyways. But certainly some seating, we have it's sort of a digital table game board, like playing digital Monopoly. There's a whole menu of things that you can do there. So we are continuing to, improve the room and continue to work on it. Children have been using it a lot. We do request that people let us know before they go in, and then we're pretty adamant that to keep it, we have to advocate for kids 6 to 12, and people have really been really wonderful about that. Sometimes somebody is a little disappointed because they can't go in, and we might make an exception there's a sibling just so they go in and just see what's in there. Because the resources and everything are for 6 to 12. We do have, we have an obligation to continue to, advocate for that age group. So people have been really enthusiastic about it, very, very happy about it. Kids are bringing out a lot of books. When we're finished in that room should hold about 10,000 books for children for that age group, which is considerable. And then they do circulate, books circulate quite a bit. So that's, if anybody has any questions about that, I'll be happy to answer them. As you can take a look, in the rod wall is always used, the Lego wall, always used. With what we really like to see, kids working together who didn't even know each other in their building and using the table as well.
I have a question. So you built out the kids area, right, but it's not expanding further. Is there a timeline? I mean, the room is there,
Correct.
so it's not growing.
No.
Is there a timeline for putting the adult portion back together?
We're already working on that,
Okay.
and I will talk a little bit about that when I get down to the goals. Our annual maintenance on rooftop units is scheduled for, I think, next week. Hopefully we won't have any bad news, but that's annual. Before I came here, there were no annual checkups at all, and things had a lot of deferred costs, so we caught up with that. And so now we make sure we keep up with the annual maintenance, and hopefully it'll be okay. Just some faucet repairs and minor things other than that for the building. I'm going to move this up a little bit as the ARIS report. It's the annual resource information survey. I want to make it's due in August. I have not started it yet. We have been very busy with the summer reading program. As I had mentioned, I'm still essentially filling 2 full-time roles here, but I've never missed the deadlines, and I'll get it done. But I wanted to, in terms of explaining a little bit about it, it's a resource survey, so it's kind of like a spotlight in time. If you look at almost any library, a lot of those things shift. And for instance, if you look at program numbers, just as a for instance, when you're trying to compare, a program can be as small as somebody reading a story and doing a puppet show and coloring sheet, and that's considered a program. Our programs are much more robust than that. So when you look at programs, you take that into consideration is what they actually are. That's the same for adult programs and for children. We put a lot into our children's programs, particularly. And neither is right or wrong. Every library is different. Every single library is different. Governance, budgeting, square footage, staffing, whether they have a union or not, hours, what they collect, what their community wants. Every single library is different, and I think that's really important to remember. So in terms of programs also, when you see that, you're not seeing, are those programs drawing 3 people or are they full? Our children's programs are always full with wait lists. So that's a consideration too. Just look at a number in isolation, it's out of context, and there's a lot of other things that factor into it. If you have programs that you draw 3 people, that program doesn't cost as much as a program. Or if you have a lot of materials and you're doing a lot more things routinely. And our programs fill very quickly. So just to keep that in mind when you're looking at the ARIS report. Also, there's different ways of people sometimes interpret them differently. Newer directors interpret a little bit differently. The software changes. So it's a good survey. I like to look at it just to see the trends, but it's not really something that you could really take to the bank in terms of this number is compared to this number, because there's so many more variables to it than that. And you'll have that for the September meeting. I always give you a copy, so you'll have that in September. So under books and our reading and updating collection development, we continue with that. that's been a massive process. We've weeded a couple of times and shifted because we've had to shift as we move things over. So yes, you will see empty shelves because that's the process. We still have a couple of thousand back here. You have to wait until you're ready to put them there. We actually established a new shelving category for nonfiction browsing, and I actually brought some so I can just kind of tell you, because people think of nonfiction, it's, how do I do this, or how do I lose weight, or how do I gain my financial, get better in financials. But there's a whole lot of other nonfiction books. They're just great. There's stuff in there that's, nobody sees because nobody's going to find it because it's not in the browsing section. So we took it upon ourselves. The catalog and I are literally going through the nonfiction section and pulling out the ones that we think would be like browsing, because not everybody just wants it. I love to browse in the nonfiction browsing section because I don't always want to work of fiction. So some of them that I pulled out, just to give you an example what these are, The Girls Who Stepped Out of Line. And so this is stories of the women who changed the course of World War II. War Dogs. A Bitter Brew, Faith, Power, and Poison in a Small New England Town. The Children's Blizzard. I don't know if you've read that, but it's a very sobering story. Murdered by His Wife, The Absorbing Tale of Crime and Punishment in 18th Century Massachusetts. Haunted Massachusetts, sorry. And this is just a small classic Celtic fairy tales. So it's just a small sample. We're kind of pulling some from every category. And we shifted everything so we could put these near the other nonfiction books. So if somebody sees something in the 940s and they want to look to see what else, it's just really turn around and there's the 940s. So we shifted several times, and we're currently filling that. So it's not full because we're being selective about what we put in. And also some of the new nonfiction books will go into the regular nonfiction, but some of them will go into this new category. So that's been a lot of work, but it's been, I think it's a great category. We had to have a new shelving location put into the system for it, and put in a ticket for that. And so I think hopefully you'll have a chance to take a look at it. Some really interesting titles that just kind of get lost. So we're kind of bringing them out. So we will continue to shift and to add and to weed. It is a major process. It's not done overnight. We are almost ready to, our signage is up there, but it's not exactly accurate. So we don't want to keep putting it up and changing it. But we're about ready to put the signage up there, and then I've been looking into getting some signage in Braille as well. Position update. So Amy Vasella is Deputy Director. She'll be starting at the end of July 22nd. So her role is sort of going to be kind of a customized position because it's not an assistant director, it's a deputy director. It's a little bit different. So the intention is to transition her to the position of director once I step down. And so her role will be much different than a traditional assistant director. She really has to, learn all about the whole library. I'm looking forward to welcoming her. I think she'll be a great addition to our staff. Technology, so we're going to be putting up QR codes for the library layout, hopefully by the end of August. As we continue to shift everything, we're going to do some diagrams so we can do some QR codes so people can see it. And also post them so they can see, where's the nonfiction section or whatever. We're lucky, not lucky, it's just a one-floor library, so it's really not difficult, but we want to make it as easy as possible. We purchased some reading lights. I looked into them before, but we don't have any plugs. It's one of the things that open concept in the building from the 60s. The only plugs are really around the room, unless they're coming down from a pole. But I did locate some that are battery operated, and we actually had people use them already. So they can just, bendable necks, they can just put it over the keyboard or put it over a book or something. So we did purchase those. We're also looking to mount iPads for catalog searches in both of the children's sections. We have to wait for DPW. There's certain places that you can't drill, so we've got to look into that. That would be very helpful because children are asking for, books and so forth. And we help them. So I thought I'd give an overview of the holds process because it's much more complicated than it might initially seem. And it sort of factors into some of the other things in terms of our library. We're a pretty small library. We're 14,500 square feet. Leicester, for instance, is, let's see if I got this. Oxford is 22,000 square feet. Millbury is 16,500. Grafton is 26. Charlton is 27,000. Webster is 20,000. So when you consider that, it's, of course, we're not going to have as many books as a city library or any of these others, and some of them have several floors. So the intention is it's a reciprocity agreement. That's why we have the consortium, so that you can get holds from other libraries. There's no way we're ever going to have every book that people want. No library will. And we have very limited space, so we have to make the best of all of that. As another sort of give you just some sort of sense of books. And also, so if somebody places a hold, and this is one reason we only open cards for Auburn residents, because if somebody places a hold, it goes to, if it's ours, it's called holds go home, and it comes back here first. So there might be 100 or 200 or 300, sometimes it's 800 holds on something. If we've purchased those, they will come back to Auburn residents first. So you really don't want to give, people in other towns, you want to serve the Auburn residents first. Turnaround time is generally 3 to 5 days. That's contingent upon a lot of things, because the vans go around to all the libraries. They have, usually every day there's some sort of issue somewhere. They do a wonderful job considering how many books they move around. In CW Mars, there's 7,600,000 books. So if you look at the percentage, how likely are we to have all of those? We do have quite a few, and we also put holds protection on our books. So when they come in, there's a 6 weeks hold protection. So they're staying on our shelves. So people can come in and borrow them, but they're non-holdable. They can't place a hold. So we do what we can to protect that. Also, let's see, there's the new catalog now. People can place their own holds much more easily. So people are placing more holds. And a couple of years ago, they extended, I actually voted against it, but it's Users Council and people voted for it, is to do the automatic renewal. So if a book goes out, it's on a 3-week loan, and then it's going to go automatic renewal. You might not get that book back for 5 or 6 weeks, and if there's a hold on it, it's going to go right back out again. That's just the nature of how the consortium works right now. So to look at holds and say, well, we can't get the book, we actually do have a pretty strong, we have a lot of people browsing, so they can get the book, they're right here. But that's the nature of the holds process, and we don't have as much space as some other libraries. So I think all considered, we do a pretty good job, and we get them out right away. We also send some back to other libraries sometimes. You're not supposed to send them out if they're in poor condition. Sometimes we'll just make the repair ourselves and send it along, but if it's in real poor condition, we send it back. And sometimes only a few libraries carry a book, so you've got to wait. So as I said, we're continuously looking, to make sure we're meeting the needs of our public, and we look to see, what it is they're asking for. We look at reports all the time. If they're asking for certain titles, or we look at the reports from CW Mars, we look at a lot of reports. And if something's, really, you can usually tell when something's going to have a lot of holes. So we'll get 2 or 3 copies, but we'll also make sure we get 1 or 2 of the electronic copies as well. And more people are borrowing electronic copies. They actually are doing both. So it's a lot more complicated than it seems. And people say, well, I didn't get the book. There's no library that has every book. There's, the city libraries don't either. And they have lots more space than we do. So we do what we can. We continue to look at this. I think that the non-browsing section we want people to feel like they have, they just want to come and look for a book on the shelf. They don't necessarily know what they want either. So I just wanted to give a little bit of overview about the holds process, that it's a little bit, definitely more complicated than people think it is.
Well, I have a question. You had listed off the square footage of area libraries. Do you have the square footage of Sturbridge? Because I think they're the only one that's small like ours, and I'm just curious.
They don't have Sturbridge. Sturbridge serves a different population in general than we do, and so we are very family oriented here. We have a lot of children's programs for a reason. And when children come into the library, we are seeing more and more grandparents bringing the children into the library, or the nannies, so we do focus a lot on that. Libraries have their niche. That's our niche. It doesn't mean we're ignoring anybody else.
We're not really a niche library though. Sturbridge has 12% of their population at age 0 to 9. We have only 10% of our population at age 0 to 9. 21% of our population is under 18. 23% of theirs is under 18. Technically, this is why they're a comp, is because we serve effectively the same population, but they have actually a few more kids. But the reason I was asking about square footage is simply that if we're doing a comparison, my understanding is they're the only other library that's small like us, and I thought they were the same.
So in terms of population, we routinely serve people from 12 area towns. So this isn't just Auburn people using our facilities. They're coming from a lot of towns. They come for our programs a lot. And some people go to different libraries. That's kind of what they do. So in terms of our children's room is quite busy, very, very often, certainly now with the summer. So if you're looking just at, again, it's one of those things that you're just looking just at this number, that doesn't reflect the use of our children's room or our library in general either. We're in a location also where we do get, people from a lot of different towns. Other libraries are a little more distant and they don't. So we make sure we're serving everybody. So the number is, again, there's a lot of variables to the number.
With regard to the holds, and I'm just confused about this part, because you've referenced you have like 1,000 books in the back because you're shifting things, but then also holds. So how does the 1,000 books in the back impact the holds? Are they out of rotation because they're not on the shelves? Are they
when we release them,
Mm-hmm.
if there's a hold on it, it triggers the hold right away as soon as we release it and it goes out. It doesn't, when we get them in, or we're looking through, we kind of know what might be requested, and so we'll sort of prioritize and get those out first.
Do we know generally when those books are going to be put out that are
They're
in?
put out every day. We're working on this every single day. We literally move around at least 5,000 books a week in various capacities. So we're working on it every single day in all areas of the library.
It's interesting what you said about the population that's being served. It looks like we've made a commitment towards a preschool focus on our library with the expansion that we've done.
Yeah.
And you're saying that those numbers are in the low percentage.
Yep.
So I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well,
I think I'll give a report. I think I'll give a report on that in September. In terms of, it's certainly not a preschool. We have this wonderful institution called the Public Library where we address preschool, emergent readers, all of those things, which are absolutely critical in terms of early literacy. And then we build into that with universal design for learning and other forms of literacy and engagement. So it's certainly not a preschool. If it's got elements of preschool, I think that's great because that's
I'm
part
talking
of the
about the visual when you come in here with the statistics you're offering. I mean, I have a lot of concerns that we were never, ever asked to participate in the conversation about that expansion. And so it is concerning to me that when you walk in, that it does look like we've got a gigantic area for a preschool. And we've taken away a lot of general space from the rest of the library. But I know that there's a different opinion on that, but I'm not the only one that has viewed it that way.
But just to clarify, you're saying preschool aged people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think.
But it looks like the amount of space allocated
Right.
would be that group is a priority over the other groups. It's a visual.
Yep.
And I would just add to that real quick. I know you have an answer. Because you've twice now said that we're a niche library, but we checked with the town manager. We're definitely not a niche library, not in terms of our intent or mission, the budget, none of it. So the intent is to serve the whole of Auburn and not just the people with kids or the kids. And I think that's really our concern, is making sure that there is equal resources given to each population. Because while I understand the idea of if you do a thing and only like 3 people are interested in the thing, it's not great. But I'm of the opinion that if you build it, they will come, as evidenced by other communities. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to get at.
So I think that, I'm not gonna, belabor this, we certainly do serve all populations. We have book clubs, we talk to all of those people, we have friends groups who talk to a lot. People in general are very, very happy with this library. Nobody can do everything, so we focus on what we can. The expansion has been, overwhelmingly supported by the public. That did not take any usable space away from the adults. They actually have a little bit more seating area. We can actually move them. Seating is a little bit further apart than it was. They were pretty close together. Does the library need some updates? Yes. I've been updating this library for 9 years, and I could give you a whole list of things. So we can't get to everything overnight, and we look to see. We talk to our patrons every day. So we are serving children, and we're also serving adults. So the children's area, unlike a lot of libraries, ours is very visible. So a lot of libraries are on another floor, tucked away in the basement or whatever. Ours is very visible. So, and it's very much appreciated and certainly adds value. And people are happy to see a town building being improved too. We hear that a lot. So I'd like to also talk about, because there's been comments about adult programs. And I sent this out. I don't think the email went out, so I'm going to read this, and there are people in the audience who maybe didn't know. So there were questions from the board about adult programs, and that we offer crafts, and there was a request for a list. So as you know, I provided with a full response and scanned in 145 documents. I'm not sure if you had a chance to read them, but they're very, very robust, gives all the information about the program, because it's more representative of the richness of the programs. I'd also like to say, in terms of, and I mentioned this to the Finance Committee, when we do offer crafts, we offer a whole host of other things, which I identified. There's an epidemic of loneliness in this country, and anytime you offer crafts or anything in the crafts, as you know, fill in about 20 minutes. A lot of our programs, all of our children's do. That's very, very important to society, that you are getting people together. One of the things that I say when people come in, for a craft or anything, especially if it's something social, not all of them are, sometimes they're lecture-based, and I will ask them, I'll say, look to the person to the left and to the right of you. This is probably somebody who lives near you and you don't know them. So this is not only about making a craft, this is about reaching out to people and social connections, and that's absolutely critical at all levels, for children, teens, adults, new moms, grandparents. So public libraries provide that really, really beneficial opportunity for people. And so crafts are great. And they're also educational, because the presenter will explain about how things are grown, or what kinds of nutrition in the soil and all those kinds of things. But we certainly don't offer only crafts. And as part of our marketing for programs, I do design customized documents. These are placed on Constant Contact. They have information about the presenters, the time, the date, there's images and other elements of information, as well as a direct link to register. They're placed on our website. They're oftentimes included on the presenter's website. They're printed and placed in the library, and they're on our glass doors. They're sent to the town's social media, and most effectively, they're sent to our Constant Contact distribution list, which currently has about 1,094 households, and they're all self-registered. So we get the word out in a number of ways. They do reach a wide audience, and also some people send them to other social media outlets as well. So there's a reason why we do have very, very robust responses to our programs as well.
Can I ask, because I genuinely don't know, is Constant Contact, I am like the biggest Luddite, is Constant Contact list the same as the list that generates the here's the kids STEM program. Is that a different list?
Constant Contact is an email distribution list. Every program that we offer is on Constant Contact. So I'm not sure if somebody's not seeing them, I'm not sure why. Every program that we offer, we coordinate that. I'll also add this in as we coordinate when we know a program is going to be filled quickly. We coordinate with myself. I send out Constant Contact. One of our tech administrators or senior associate sends it out on our website. And as John will tell you, I will send him a note and say, John, can we send this at 1 o'clock sharp? And so we're all sending it out at exactly the same time. Everybody has exactly the same opportunity to register.
How does someone get on the Constant Contact?
They can just call us, and it's always on the newsletter. We ask everybody when they come in, do you want to be on a Constant Contact email distribution list? And so we don't ever sell lists, and we don't put anybody on there. They have to request being on there. So that's a couple of years ago. I actually started this about, it might have been 5 years ago. So that's a very significant number, considering they're all self. They can actually register themselves too. There's this button right at the top of our website. So in terms of, I've been here for 9 years. The first 2 years were spent on a lot of other priorities as established by Julie Jacobson, who was the town manager at the time, and myself. And we also lost about 2 years for the pandemic. So when considering that, the programs that I listed here represent about five years. And during those 5 years, 247 adult programs were offered. That comes to about just slightly under 50 per year. That's very good for us, our library and our size. You have to be careful that you're not sort of over marketing everything, and then you end up with fewer people. Some of them we offer twice, and I did send out this table also. Just so that the numbers make a little bit more sense. I scanned in promotions for 145 libraries. Have any of you had a chance to look at them?
For the programs you've offered?
Mhm.
I looked at them.
There were about 15 that were unavailable for various reasons. 87 of them were offered multiple times, or we had more sessions because we had such long wait lists. We're sometimes unable to do that. And so the average number of adult programs per year has been 49.4. So we certainly do offer a lot of adult programs. And I gave you a list here. Also, the breadth of those is author presentations, gardening, science, legal information, Auburn history, education, women's history, nutrition, career preparation and support, wildlife, art, crafts, cooking, financials, music, and more. So, and I continue to offer more. We've got some in the queue for fall as well. So I just wanted to make sure that there's a good understanding that we are offering certainly a lot more than just crafts, but that also I don't have anything against offering crafts. I think that they're also very, very beneficial.
I think the craft offerings are great, and I think the summary doesn't do justice to the depth and breadth of programs. But I have to, is the importance of these kids or adults. There are some things I think, okay, I think in some cases your offerings are broader than is adequately captured here, and I think some of the things captured here aren't necessarily adult programs. I think it's a surprise to all of us because we haven't seen, the reason I'm asking you about constant contact, I double checked. Again, I am a Luddite, but other people watch, so this is a good opportunity to let them know. I get emails from Auburn Public Library program updates, but I don't see any of this stuff. I see the kids list. So one of the questions I was going to ask was, how do people know, like specifically, right? The Bemis Container Gardens caught my eye. Was that June 4th of 2024? Was that this year, Tuesday, June 4th? No. Okay. I was because there aren't
getting
years.
a feed from somewhere else.
Huh?
Things are picked up and go. I don't know why you would see that.
Oh, because there aren't years on most of them. So I tried to map the programs to the year. You have the date. You have the day and the date. So I was trying to map it to which year the program was so that we could quantify how many programs a year you were. That's why I'm saying that the grid doesn't exactly give you justice. I think the programs are broader than we have thought them to be, because we hear about kids programs all the time, but we don't really hear about the adult programs, and the offerings are impressive. But I was very confused because I was like, how did I miss this? This sounds cool, and I literally didn't hear anything about it. So that's why I asked. I was trying to map which programs took place in 2024 or 2023 or 2022. I got through the first 4 attachments, but again, and the.
Well, the
years seem
intention
to be
was to
everywhere.
give you a sense of what we're offering, and we've offered a lot, and I do vet the presenters, and they're very high quality programs, and a lot of them have, you can fit 60 people in the room, so naturally they're not all going to be filled at 60, although some of them are, some are filled, and then we have, it also depends on what you're doing. If you're doing some sort of craft or something, you also have to cap it lower. So we have lecture-based programs, and you can have up to 50 and 60, and we certainly have had that on some programs.
Yeah, and I love the
So-
career stuff, that you had some really great career workshops and really great gardening workshops. And in fairness, I did not know, did you guys know? About the adult workshops, like I didn't know, I think it would be great if we could hear about them.
Well, I just listed all the places we put them, so I guess I could call you.
Well, no, like,
No,
I
I think-
know when you present
Yeah.
the kids programs to us and you talk about here's the kids programs we ran and here's what it entailed and here's how many kids came, like stuff like that. We hear that a lot, so we know you're offering a lot of kids programs. But we don't hear about the adult programs, and even when we've asked them in the past, we haven't heard about them. And so the impression was that there simply weren't any except for the occasional craft program during the holidays, which I hear about because people complain that they didn't get it. So I think, if these exist, I think it's wonderful. I think we just want to hear more about them.
Well, I don't mind reading about it, but I don't want to hear about it all.
Well, no, not in
No.
detail, but
No.
like, for example,
But I read everything, but I don't feel the need to read it because I hear it all over again.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to read everything. There's not a thing that we have coming in front of us. I read all of those pages.
Right.
But
I think what I hear the board saying is you want to be informed and you want to have a voice, which is what you said earlier, or we want to have a voice.
yeah, because
Can I also, so I was thinking about this, Jean, as you were presenting, and I was kind of looking at the way that this was presented, and I think that this actually gets to speaking to this idea around the prompts, around tying it back to the strategic plan, and maybe coming up with a more kind of structured formatting around the reporting out and some of these things where, yes, it's like the numbers, but not necessarily such like deep elaboration on some of the things, if I'm reading the room correctly here, but this is where we had talked in those tactic reporting things around just not just listing the programs, but then breaking them down and just coming up with, a monthly standardized format for that, just to help us. It's more that we want to know the stats to show progress against the goals, as opposed to
All the details.
necessarily the details. I love hearing about them because it's sparking my interest, and I want to bring my son to some more activities and things. But I think just in terms of what I'm hearing from Vera and Matt is trying to find a more expeditious approach to reporting out on them for purposes of tying it to the strategic progress.
Yeah.
So that's what occurred to me as I was listening to you guys. So.
yeah, like at a minimum, we want to hear they're occurring, because all this time we thought there weren't any, but if there are, we want to know. Although possibly, I guess, not in great detail, because it's true, we could read about them, and I will make sure I'm signed into the right places, because the problem is totally giddy. But I do want to know that they're occurring. And I feel like we put a lot of focus on reestablishing adult programs that weren't there, because it was our understanding that they weren't there, because we haven't heard about them.
So if I could just,
Yeah,
I routinely report these in director's reports and the newsletters and the annual report, all of those are there. So my intention here was just to address that there was a comment just about crafts and that somebody wanted to see a list. And so that's what I did. This was not intended to be, a drill down. It was just to give you an overview of what we are offering, and to see that it's not just crafts, but also that, in my opinion, crafts are also very valuable for the social aspect of it. So, to drill down into all those other things, that wasn't my intention. It was just part of my report that I did make sure I pulled all of those out, so that you could get a sense of the breadth of the different programs and what they are. So
I was concerned about the crafts only insofar as the assessment of that is pretty straightforward. And I was concerned about, I knew there were adult programs going on, I just didn't see any assessment of the adult programs, that was my concern. It's not that the craft programs are unimportant, but that the assessment of the others are at least equally as important or more valuable.
Okay, so I'll just move on. Thank you. Thank you. So we held a book fair for children ages 6 to 12. It was pretty successful. A lot of really happy children come in. We're happy. We gave them stickers and they could go through. We had the room set up on a lot of tables here in the Mary Room. So they could put stickers on the ones that they wanted us to order. And a lot of them had, multiple stickers on them. And so we did order all of those books. And it was very good. I would definitely do that again. And not all vendors would do that. This vendor was open to doing that. So they felt, really happy to be able to come and help us choose what to order. Our summer reading program. So there is some information in the newsletter, but I just will, because it's a tremendous amount of work for us. Some libraries do a real lot around Christmas or Easter or something. We don't. We go all out for our summer reading program. We want to draw everybody in. We want to do it in multiple ways. We want to encourage and inspire them, and we want to be involved with it. So we are actually kicking off sort of a soft kickoff on Friday, and then our kickoff is on Saturday with ice cream sundaes. So just to give you some of the things that we're doing, because we do want to encourage reading in multiple formats. So this year they actually can sort of participate in 4 different levels of it. There's some reading. So this year when they read, they are going to earn tokens. So there's a little math. If they want to trade this in for a reading reward, they're going to have to add up how many the tokens are worth and do that. When they register, this is one of the reasons ours are a lot of work, is they have this reading log so they can keep track here. And the tokens are on the back and how much those are worth. And they can also earn stickers. They get one of these bags and they get a number of other incentives. So one of the other things that they can do, which we're encouraging this year, is they get this little kit. It's in Nature Discovery Scavenger Hunt. And so there's one for each week. We're doing it for 4 weeks. And so when you open it up, and these, by the way, we didn't purchase these. These were old CD cases that we kept, and we are repurposing them. So here they have 12 things listed in nature that they should find, and they can check them off. And then they can earn specialty tokens, like this one. They can decorate them. These are worth 2 hours. So anything that encourages them. I know I had a parent really happy because they're going camping this weekend, and so that's perfect for them. Each child can take one and sort of, look up, participate in the scavenger hunt. And they get these little gold bags also to hold their gold coins, tokens. So we've done a story walk at the Auburn Mall for the last couple of years. And we'll be doing one in the backyard of the library. I'm just waiting for the signs to come up. We've got everything ready, so they can go in the back and participate in the story walk, and that adds to 30 minutes of reading. They could also do the one at the Auburn Mall. We'll be changing out the one in the backyard once a week. At the mall, we do it every 3 or 4 weeks. So that's another way that they can participate. They also can participate, and this will start next week. There's a lot of programs out, read 1,000 books by kindergartners, which I think sounds completely overwhelming. So we're going to do something on that agenda, on that idea, but they can customize it, choose for themselves. If they want to read, what's their goal? 10 books by first grade, that might be a lot for one child. And so we don't want to, so they'll be able to do that and also earn the minutes and the tokens. So we get really busy. Last year we had 344 children register. We don't really know how many we'll get, but we put 100% into all of it. And every time people come in for it, obviously they're using the library and they're borrowing lots of books, and so it's win-win. So we put a lot of effort into our summer reading program.
Can I ask, what is the spend on the giveaways for your kids' programs?
I guess I should back up a little bit. The Cultural Council provides us with $1,000, and the Friends provide us with $500. We actually have, some of them we sort of create our own kits with Legos. So that's one of the giveaways. So we kind of, with Legos, we just buy in bulk and we make them up ourselves. We have a lot that we have when we have programs or different materials and you buy in bulk. So we separate those out, so those will be giveaway. We're not purchasing them again, we've already purchased them for something else, so we're reusing them. And we go to the dollar store a lot. I go to the dollar store a lot. So I fully expect what the Cultural Council and what the Friends provided with us is sufficient.
So your $1,500 is the annual spend on the giveaways for kids?
It depends how you look at it. So, yeah, I mean, we're not buying $1,500 worth. Like I just said, we're pulling them from a number of different places as well. So, library of things, we continue to progress. We're looking as we keep trying to clear up space, which has been most of the issue, and working around the other programs and initiatives. All staff are involved in Library of Things. There's a lot of discussion on director listservs. We talk to other directors. I talk to other directors. We look at theirs. They look at ours. There's customized cataloging that has to be done. I sent something out to other directors and said, my cataloger would like to really meet physically with somebody. And immediately 7 other directors responded and said, sure, here's our sheet, but do you want to come here? Do you want us to come there? So, and I should back up with this. Library directors we don't compete with each other ever. It's a very, very, very supportive network. So we're not competing with each other. We're always helping each other with questions, or somebody's got a challenge. There's a way you just put it out on the list there, and somebody's going to, support that question, and we support each other's successes too. So if some library is doing something wonderful, we're all happy about that. We're all in here for the same purpose, it's to serve the public. So we are working on Library of Things. I think I read off a list of the things that we had before. That list has pretty much doubled. There's between 60 and 70 items.
Excuse me, what kind of items?
I don't have the list in front of me.
No, just three.
So there are DVD players. Not everybody has DVD player anymore. We're looking at, I'm going to draw a blank, but metal detectors. Everybody wants metal detectors. Butterfly kits.
You said you have metal detectors?
I'm looking into them. I have to consider every single thing about space. It's about space. And also, we don't really want things that are consumables. We want things that we have to get the back and clean them and do all those other things. So we have quite a few on the list, and we look to see what others are doing. They ask us what we're doing. So that's coming along, and hopefully the summer reading program will keep us very busy, but we'll be simultaneously working on this as well.
Could you send us a list, especially the subcommittee on the library things, of what you already have?
Or what you already thought of, because you're.
Well, it's what you
We
have.
actually have. Is
That's what I'm
yeah.
interested in, yeah.
We haven't purchased them
says.
all yet
Okay.
because we don't have the space,
Okay.
which I was saying. So summer initiatives and collaborations. I'm meeting actually with some people tomorrow for a book club for children, with the children as well. So that's with parents and children. So we'll see if we can, kick that off. Reading around town, so I'll be participating in that as well. All the town departments do. I've met with the Swanson Road reading specialist and on the other schools as well. So they continue to do a really good job, I think, with their summer reading. They have to read a biography, but they can read, other, like Who Is, What Are, I Survived. Kids love the I Survived series, so kudos to her that she's allowing that, because they literally go out with 3 or 4 in their hands. So we worked with them, and I have the other resources that they needed. We're working with Auburn Youth and Family Services with the garden program. So there'll be several programs here, and then we'll also be going to Auburn Youth and Family Services because they have the gardens are there that were donated by Masterman's, and some of the plants were donated by Bell's. So we're very collaborative in terms of putting this together. So they'll go there and they'll learn about community food banks, and they'll be weeding the gardens and learning about produce and everything else. I'll be working with the recreational summer camp also because they want to come here once a week. I'm not sure we can accommodate once a week, but we'll do that. Auburn Police Department, I've spoken with a couple of them. They're very interested in doing the program with us. So I would also say that we seem to be doing a lot more sort of customizing programs. I've been in touch by the Boy Scouts and the Cub Scouts again to do another badge program. We did one for the Daisies. We've done several of those as well. So we're always happy to do that. Some of the programs in the queue, also Friends book sales. We also help support the Friends and their book sales, which have been pretty successful. Programs in queue is babysitting certification by the Red Cross, a summer reading kickoff, animal adventures, which always fills, Rosie the Riveter. This was rescheduled by the presenter. Soap making for children, one for adults, Progressive Bug Me. We just had this one outside yesterday. Filter capacity was great, seeing, I think, 30 children out in the backyard trying to catch bugs. And he's really very knowledgeable of all that, so he gives a lot of, good presentation about that. And we, of course, always read a story, and we hand out the literacy sheets as well. Ted Reinstein will be returning. We have some programs from Step Beginnings, Oceans for young children, Oceans for older children. Cemetery sleuthing is, I'm looking into that one. That obviously is for adults. And butterfly programs. So this is just a few of them. There's others under consideration. Programs are a lot of work to put together. There's a lot of different, elements to that. So
Is Rosie the Riveter kids or adults?
that's adults.
Cool. And what is cemetery sleuthing?
That's adults. I'm still working with her because I want to make sure there's sensitivity in that, because you can't do grave rubbings anymore or anything like that. And I don't think that's what she's doing. So I'm still working with her to make sure it fits kind of where we want to go with that. So others, the Friends Tea fundraiser, and I included some information in the newsletter about that. They worked very hard. They did a great job. And also there was an Owl Pellet program. And I would say this is a children's program, but the adults participate as well, and they're just fascinated by it. So, and our story walks. So that's pretty much what I have for now. If I missed anything.
Any questions? Thank you, Jane. So before we adjourn, I just want to reiterate, we talked about what we're committing to with our library goals. Our next formal meeting as a full body would be Wednesday, September 4th in this room, in the Merriam Room at 6 p.m. Any other comments before, ma'am? Go ahead. Vera?
We didn't do the bill schedule, and I have a question. Liz, Fun Express LLC. It's okay.
Okay.
Okay, which is
Fun Express LLC on page, it says page
those
1.
are usually either craft materials or we buy in bulk and they're very inexpensive. So some of the giveaways, for some reason.
And the 2 Bemis Farms for $600 something.
Those were Opportunia giveaways, which are always very much appreciated. And I believe that one was paid for by the Cultural Council, the petunias and the tomato plants.
And those are just straight giveaways. There's no like class or activity around them.
We did before, but we didn't do it this year. But sometimes we do. It depends if we're going to give them to children or how many per family or whatever. But this year we actually doubled the amount. So because so many people wanted them, so we didn't do a program with it this time. But children do get literacy sheets to go along with anything growing.
Just wonder how expensive that is per person.
That's a good question. How many?
That's for another day, I guess.
As I said, the Cultural Council provides.
Oh yeah, no, we were just curious about cost per person. But that's all right. We can email that.
Any other bill schedule questions?
The other thing I had was, what is Uline? I think I should know that, but I can't remember.
Uline is, I'm not sure which one you're looking at, but that's where we buy our racks.
Yeah, that's $1,800.
That probably was,
There's a supplier, is that fair?
I'm sorry?
Is that equipment supplies?
Yes, it's the racks that we had to get another one because we don't have the shelves in the expansion, so.
Okay.
We had to get a couple more of those.
So is that a plan for permanent use going forward? Is there?
Yeah, we always have that. Because we have no space, so we literally move around every single day in different places. And the friends actually purchased them too because they were so useful.
while we're on that page, can I just ask Boston Children's Museum, that's a pass, $7.25 is the cost? Yeah, and that's the cost of one, because there's such a wide variation, I just wanted to know. Cool.
Any other questions, bill schedule questions? Okay, so I just want to reiterate, next meeting, our formal meeting as a full board is Wednesday, September 4th at 6 PM here in the Merriam Room. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Wait a minute, did you just raise? Okay, so that would be Vera is one and Matt is two. Oh, Erica,
I
sorry.
don't have any more papers.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
And very good.